Well, because I guess he never really did. Next, defensive coordinator under new latest staff rumblings. A little bit some transfer portal talk heading into the year college football playoff. All on tonight live from snowy on December 8th, year of our Lord 2020. Very, very busy in Blacksburg for the latest staffing. And as we get into the trend, 50% off through the end of the year. Great to get over there. It's been a ton of fun. It feels too long, you know. It's been way too long. Has adjust the schedule a little bit, but thanks to everyone and all the support. It's meant a ton. Audio's bad. Go fixed. Zeb.
Holler at me. Hopefully that fixed the audio. We'll work on that. But yes, thank you so much for tapping in. Okay, there we go. Got the audio fixed. So it's a live production. We're still working through some things. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so we can get the resources. Shout out Evan G. Watkins to get this better. So thank you everyone for alerting me to that so we didn't go too deep. Anyway, let's jump into it. Thank you for the support. Subscribe to the channel so we get the audio right. Yeah, getting right into things. Brent Pry, new Virginia Tech defensive coordinator. A lot of emotions, a lot of feelings. There's a lot there. Obviously, being the head coach at a place like Virginia Tech and then getting fired 3 games into the year, there's a lot there. And we'll unpack some of that. I'm sure there'll be questions about it. But, I mean, if you were to tell yourself a month ago when this Franklin search was just starting that, you know, obviously still some of the contract details are still to be worked out with the buyout situation, there's a lot there. But to think a couple weeks ago that Brent Pry would be on with James Franklin as the defensive coordinator, it's a changing time in college football because it takes a lot to swallow your pride to do that. I mean, I know a similar situation just went down at Mississippi State. Bobby Petrino at Arkansas would be similar, but I don't know if anything in the exact same calendar year to sign on to the staff has ever occurred. So that's pretty crazy. I mean, the timing of it. But, you know, in going back and sort of catching the footing after the audio issue, I think the timing of it in talking to contacts over the weekend, this was a name that was brought up obviously pretty immediately with Franklin's arrival. This was something that was kept in mind at his introductory press conference when, you know, he got a little emotional up there on stage. This was something where it's like, oh, is he going to be a defensive analyst or is he going to come on in this role? But for him to come on, and it sounds like Franklin in that introductory press conference with the team pretty much laid out that as a potential option to have Brent Pry on. And across the board, based on what I'm hearing, it seems like a pretty popular hire with a lot of players on defense. Specifically, obviously, I mean, I put out the tweet there over the weekend when, you know, it just came out there early Sunday morning that, you know, I was talking with some players the night before, and they were pretty much along the lines of saying, we still like Pry. We honestly thought he probably should have called the defense this year. And, you know, I was on the Inside the Tunnel podcast earlier, and I pointed to Brent Venables, obviously someone who gave up defensive play calling, went into this year kind of as a lame duck and took defensive play calling under his wing, and has had immense success with Oklahoma, led them to the playoff. Now, it's granted a totally different situation, but that shows, you know, a semblance of Pry's standing with the team. But, I mean, there's a lot there. Obviously, the Old Dominion and Vanderbilt games, there's different things you can point to. But at the same time, the last time he was the signal caller calling the plays for defense in 2022 with that roster of talent that really just wasn't up to snuff, if you want to call it straight up. You know, he coached a top 50, top 45 defense, which is really impressive. So by all accounts, it seemed to be a very positive reaction, but it just takes a lot to swallow your pride. And, you know, there is a history there. So it's not you're bringing in a new guy and you extend them a long leash. There's going to be a little bit of scar tissue there where you start out that season. If it's VMI, if it's ODU or whoever, you get down a touchdown, it's going to get really loud. But at the same time, you have head coaching experience on your staff. James Franklin's been doing this a really long time, has promoted a lot from within, has rotated through some defensive coordinators in recent years, going from Allen to now Knowles. Maybe he wants the comfortability of knowing his guy like Pry is right there. So I think that's really interesting. Obviously, not having to move too far, staying in Blacksburg. Now, we'll get into some of the other staff around him, but I think you'll definitely see quite a bit of overhaul on the defensive staff, if not a complete overhaul, just with the resources and the draw of James Franklin that Pry wasn't really able to do. But I mean, he's still very popular with high school coaches, popular with the players. And the last time we called it defense, you can call it antiquated or whatever. In 2022, with that roster, a top 50 defense by all metrics. So I think it's a good hire. I think there's just a lot of different places it would be a really, really good or positive, favorable hire. It's just there, when you're looking at the college football playoff this weekend, it's like take the logos away, blind resume. Well, when you're hiring someone, you don't not look into their past and connections, relationships. It's not just raw numbers on a stat sheet. There are relationships, there's feelings, there's obviously things that go to Brent Pry and Virginia Tech that go beyond just how good you can call a defense. So it's obviously Franklin's guy. He went out and hired the right guy he thought for the job. And yeah, we'll see how it works out. It'll be definitely interesting as we get closer in interviews and how different things are handled. But very, very different time in college football, obviously with Mississippi State doing something similar. But it almost gets you talking with even different people that Sunday morning who are not the biggest college football fans. And they thought, I mean, it is just innately a little bit awkward. It's like you just fired him and now he's back on. So, and like I said, I think I saw some comments about why is this not done, officially announced from the school. I think there's going to be some red tape to work through with agents, the school, and lawyers about the buyout, what the salary structure is going to look like. But I mean, obviously, confirmed reporting on vtscoop.com there by CBS. So, yeah, I think there's a lot on Pry. I'll get into some questions about that. Hopefully, the audio is still doing well. Appreciate all the comments for that. So we caught that. But yeah, Brent Pry back as Virginia Tech's defensive coordinator. I think how he fills out his staff is going to be really interesting. The timing of all that is going to be interesting. But I mean, the dynamics it's going to be a very new roster as well. So that's something you have to look over. A lot of these guys were recruited by Pry, so they have a relationship, but it is just very awkward. I mean, anyone who's ever gone from one job to the next or has been let go from a position, I just think it would be really tough to walk in to the same meeting rooms, the same hallways, and be the office down the hall. But obviously that shows their connection from James Franklin crying on stage. Obviously it means something. And this is something that it sounds like it's been even in the works longer than been reported. Like it sounds like that initial team meeting when they got there, Pry was brought up as a name that could potentially or was already sort of locked in to be the defensive coordinator, which I mean says a lot. Like you typically, like I said, out of 135 FBS programs, this would be a great hire at most of them. A head coaching experience, albeit didn't work out the best way, but someone who has very high level organizational structure skills and has coached top defenses before, good recruiter, but just at Virginia Tech coming back so fresh. I think this is the first time sort of ever. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how that plays out. Good time to make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, trying to keep good content rolling out here in the off season. Be a ton to talk about. But yeah, I appreciate the support. Next, I guess staff rumblings and buzz. And first, starting off with, I think you have to talk about retention of the current staff. Someone we've been talking about here on this show here for a while, Fontel Mines, wide receivers coach, assistant head coach. That is someone, based on what we're hearing, is still expected to be retained at Virginia Tech. Someone who obviously is an alumni of Virginia, the school down in Charlottesville, but has been at Virginia Tech now for a couple years after being at Old Dominion, knows the 757 region very well. Richmond, native of Richmond, so recruits that area well. Very dynamic recruiter, has brought in a lot of talent. So I think that's someone that you can expect to stay on. Now, do they go assistant? Obviously, Cam Phillips is there assisting him. That's something to watch. And another name that seemed to have popped up early, but then sort of went away. But at the same time, Matt Moore along that offensive line, not sure, but just hearing a little bit more murmurs there of him potentially sticking on, which I think is really big. You know, I've made the joke before of, wow, you can keep an offensive line coach for more than a year. Obviously, as Virginia Tech went from Joe Rudolph to Ron Crook to Matt Moore, and it was just a revolving door. Matt Moore obviously has connection to a lot of the players he brought over, Kyle Altuner, some of these other guys. And, you know, to have some continuity there is really big at a position. So not sure, obviously still a lot to play out, but someone where if Trotwine from Penn State doesn't follow, and based on reporting and talking to different contacts, it sounds like he's talking with South Carolina or Florida, or potentially even to make the jump to the NFL and talking to different people. I think that would be interesting. Now he has his assistant, Jens Danielson. Does he stay on? I think that's interesting. But those two names are something to watch. Also in strength and conditioning, sounds like Jarrett Ferguson will likely stay on. Now, I'm not sure if he'll stay on as the director or the second man, but it sounds like Ferguson will stay on based on some of the stuff we're hearing. Jeff Eaton heard over the weekend, sounds like he took the head job out west at Oregon State. So just some notes there on the staff, working through some back channels, trying to get all that info out. But yeah, I see someone saying Brooks in the chat. Had not heard about Elijah Brooks really on the retention front for the offensive staff. So that question, we'll get into even some more, but that's most of the retention of what I'm hearing at this point. Sorry for the shaky start as we got the audio fixed, but we're rolling now. So I guess the next part of that is when announcing the entire staff. What's the rush at this point? It's a dead period. The portal doesn't open until January 2nd. And a lot of the times you're rushing to go pay more money just to have the security of knowing they're there. And I think a big part of that is like when getting this OC, obviously the DC is locked with Pry. I know I saw comments about, well, the announcement's not official yet. It is agreed upon. It's just got to work through some contractual figures before the school and comes out in that manner. But like the offensive staff, what is the rush? I think make sure you go find the guy that you want. So I think that's really important. But at the same time, what's the rush right now? You have close to 20 days to really sort of take your time in this and make sure you get the right guy. Because, you know, coaches are still working through bowl games. They obviously, there's still a lot to play out. And a lot of the times, if you want to get that done quicker, you have to buy out the structure and the bowl bonus. So that'll be interesting. We'll get into that a little bit as well. But on the offensive coordinator search, obviously talking about Pry, defensive coordinator. If you have questions on that, drop them in the chat. We'll touch on all of those later. But at offensive coordinator, have been talking on the show about JDB, John David Baker at East Carolina. Obviously someone who's coached alongside Lane Kiffin, runs a very dynamic offense, has interest from multiple programs. It sounds like has interviewed a couple places. Can confirm that he has interviewed with Virginia Tech, but based on here Monday, it does not sound like Virginia Tech is really trending that direction to move forward with JDB. There were some ties there. It sounds like he interviewed, but it doesn't sound like Virginia Tech is going to move in that direction at this time. Next up, you know, you at ODU, when James Franklin went and perused the sideline, the location, and I just saw it jumped in the chat, Ricky Ronnie as well as Kevin Decker. Some smoke there, but at this point, I do not see that materializing for Virginia Tech at the offensive coordinator position. I know people have obviously put Ronnie and Pry as two guys who came from the Franklin system together, and there was some smoke, but it does not sound like Ronnie is going to move from being the head coach at Old Dominion at this time, neither, or potentially Kevin Decker. That might be a whole different situation. I haven't heard much on him, but at least for Ronnie specifically, had not heard of him making the move to Virginia Tech, which is interesting because obviously, like I said, Ronnie doesn't have that connection to Virginia Tech like Brent Pry would, but someone who has now head coaching experience, which looks really valuable when making a hire. So I just think it's like that same vein when you're ruling against Pry would look so valuable if, like you heard, there's interest from a Mississippi State or an Arkansas for Brent Pry. So it'd kind of be the same for Ronnie. But anyway, it doesn't sound like they're going to move in that direction with Ronnie. So OC is still kind of a little bit up in the air. Have heard some connections from guys at Penn State. Ty Howell, the tight ends coach, have heard continuous smoke there that, you know, he's going to come on and potentially coach tight ends. Obviously, as he was coaching up there. So tight end coach, I don't think he's ever called plays. So like you heard the connection there. Could he call plays potentially? I'm not sure. Obviously, nothing he's done there with any position coaches coming on, but Tyler Bowen was once at Penn State and was coaching the O-line, and he hadn't called plays before, I don't think either. I think Hal played offensive line as well. So could that be two guys named Ty who became first-time offensive coordinators? I'm not sure. With the staff pool you were given, I think that'd be a little bit of a disappointment for Virginia Tech, but that's just something coming out of the tight ends room. Obviously, recruited elite talents like Luke Reynolds, Matt Henderson from Virginia, Andrew Alesh has a really dynamic staff pool with them. So that's a name to watch at the position coach. I'm not so sure about calling plays. That's for offense. Like I said, running back coach, haven't heard much there. I see people talking about Brooks. Haven't heard anything for running back coach, but have heard Howell linked to tight end. And previously had heard Trotwine linked to O-line, but it sounds like more smoke building towards Matt Moore. And then let's flip over to the defensive side with some of those new coaches. Had Tyrell Grant on last week, and it was sort of that clip that got out there about he's going to bring down the safeties coach from ... and connecting the dots there, as well as hearing from connections that in the industry. It does sound like they're going to try and take a pretty big swing at Anthony Poindexter. Obviously the Virginia alum, someone who's been at Penn State for quite a while now with Franklin, safeties coach. It sounds like they're going to try and take a pretty big swing. Now it's going to take probably some monetary investment. I think that's where it ties in. Like, what's the rush? If you're going to take a swing, or if you think you're going to move that direction, he still has to coach the bowl game. And it's like, why rush? And, Penn State's going to probably stick the knives up to try and hold their walls up for as long as possible. But, what's the rush? Let the bowl play out, let the contract play out, and then make a move there. I think would probably be the judgment. But here, like, you have the same comments about it. It does sound like there's real momentum building towards Stacks. And even previously, it sounds like there was some momentum between Virginia Tech and Terry Smith. But obviously, Penn State made a pretty hefty investment to keep Terry Smith up there, as he was sort of the key to keeping a lot of player retention for Matt Campbell and them to not lose a recruiting class and also a full portal class, try and hold the strings together a little bit. So it sounds like that was a pretty key hire for them. Moving back, obviously, a linebacker coach, I've heard smoke around Dan Connor from Penn State. Evan G. Watkins was reporting that a couple nights ago with, obviously following him on various social media platforms and their connections. So I wouldn't be shocked by that. A name also that's been tied in pretty much from the start at special teams, Justin Lustig. So those are just a lot of the guys that we're sort of hearing right now. But outside of that, I think that's most of the murmurs, buzz, latest rumblings on the staff that I've heard from my end. Some stuff along the defensive line, but we'll see how that all shakes out. But I think they do have a pot to go get much more experienced coaches than what's been at Virginia Tech in the past. So I think that's pretty advantageous. Appreciate everyone jumping in here at a little bit of a different location. Got finals going on this week, so a little bit spread out. So appreciate everyone sticking with us through the audio lighting constraints. Hopefully the internet's good. But thank you guys for all the support. Make sure to subscribe to the show. I have another show here Wednesday night at 8:30. Shows throughout winter break for all the staffing, transfer portal needs. Subscribe to the show, like the video, share it with a friend. But yeah, talk a little bit about the portal, and then I guess a little bit about the college football playoff, and yeah, then we'll get into some Q&A. So, first off with the portal, like I said, I think a big part of the staffing is like, what's the rush right now? You're obviously having a lot of those tough conversations. Well, Franklin is having a lot of those tough conversations with the staff, building that out, obviously keeping who he wants to keep, sort of having those conversations with people that he's going to let go. And same with the players. A lot of those retention meetings are sort of going that way. Pry sounds like he's been a very positive pick for a lot of the defensive players, but there's going to be quite a bit of attrition. So you'll start to see some of those announcements start to trickle out where it's planning to enter the transfer portal, as you've seen start to come out in the coming days, as obviously January 2nd is the first official day to enter the transfer portal. But, these next 20 days are sort of a sprint to scout and evaluate your roster on who you want. And, it's ideal to have some of that staff next to you to try and put that together so you're not just pulling all by yourself. But at the same time, you have to weigh the monetary benefit. And honestly, by the time you roll around January 2nd, most of the staff will be on campus for those visits. So it's really kind of a moot point. But yeah, I'm still expecting probably close to 20 to 30 portal guys coming in. So, obviously with the seniors leaving and you're going to see quite a bit of attrition. I mean, a pretty much flipped roster. So, um, yeah, it's definitely going to be very, very interesting times around the transfer portal. And then I guess getting into the college football playoff here briefly before you hop into some questions. Appreciate all the live viewers sticking with me through the audio issues. Make sure to subscribe. Uh, there's a whole lot to this, but it's just I think it comes down to there's always going to be a team at the end that feels like they got left out. And in this process, I feel like there's just bigger forces at play trying to bring even more light to saying, well, this is why we need 14. This is why we need 16. This is why we need 24 teams. And at the end of the day, we went from a 2-team championship to 4 teams, and we skipped over 6, 8, whatever, and we went straight to 12. And now, after 2 years, we're ready to blow it up and go straight to 16 or 24. And I just think it's a little bit preposterous to take that much value off the regular season of college football. Like the regular season games need to mean everything for college football. That's what makes it special. And just yes, I mean I'm seeing someone say 4 was nice. Like that's what I'm saying. It took sort of the error out of the BCS. You didn't have an undefeated team left out of the BCS. But I mean to now think that an 8-4 team playing a game in November that doesn't really mean anything. You're resting your starters. Like I don't know. I just think it cheapens the value. I think there's a lot there. I wanted to tirade earlier on the Inside the Tunnel podcast, but it's just I feel like something has to be done, and there will be changes, obviously, as the sport sort of blows up, and it's probably going to go to the Super League format where you're not talking about a James Madison and a Tulane matching up with the Georgia and an Ole Miss or an Oregon. Like you're playing a different sport here, and I just think it's very, very tough when you want to go to 24 and they want to talk about expanding the college basketball playoff, and it's just very frustrating where that's why it's exclusive. And I used a reference earlier. It's like The Incredibles. When everyone's special, no one will be. If everyone's a 4-star, it devalues it. If everyone can make the playoffs, why does it matter that you beat your rival this year? It just really cheapens the value. And I know it's all about the TV product, but then you're cheapening the product because then you're changing the standard. You're already seeing it with the bowl games. Like why Notre Dame denied their bowl bid because there's no value in that. So it completely devalues the season if all you're aiming for is a college football playoff. That's the only way to benchmark yourself is having a successful season. And I just think that's not really constructive for the sport. It's not constructive for the players. It's not constructive for the coaches. It's not a constructive message. But anyway, until there's a committee, not a committee, until there's a governing body over the sport that seems to have the best interest of not their logo of the conference, but the actual sport, I don't think you'll see much improvement. And I don't know how close to a resolution they are. But just some thoughts there. Appreciate everyone tuning in tonight. It's been quite a couple weeks. But thank you so much. Like I say, I hope it never comes off as cheap for all the support. It's been absolutely amazing. Met a ton of people who watched the show this weekend, which is super gratifying. So thank you guys. Subscribe to the show, like it, and let's jump into some questions. Dump ton of questions in the live chat. Let's go for a while. Just let's have some fun. So dump any questions. I'll answer what I can. And yeah, thank you guys again. All right, let's get through all these about how bad the audio is. Okay, here we go. Ton of audio questions at the front. Cool. All right. Question from Cosmonaut315. When does the official announcement for Pry happen? Like I said, sort of at the top of the show and touched on, I think a lot of that is still tying into the stipulations of his buyout structure and how they're going to work that. I think an announcement will be coming here relatively soon. It's just working through those contract details as, it's going to be a little confusing for Virginia Tech and their lawyers. Like, yeah, so the guy we just let go, $6 million buyout, we're going to rehire in a different role for this network. So I'm glad I'm not in those meetings. Like I said, when we were going through the whole James Franklin saga, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know exactly all the benchmarks in that, but I'm sure there's definitely some red tape to work through. Got David the Barber saying there's a flood coming from Texas and it's going to cause chaos. Probably referencing Coach Chaos. Sean Spencer, the defensive line coach at Texas A&M, obviously extremely close with Brent Pry, coach under James Franklin. It sounds like they're good friends. I mean, the defensive staff, it sounds like it got relatively cleaned out. So went through a couple names that I was hearing. Sean Spencer could be one of those guys popping up. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Someone who Pry's obviously stayed very, very close with, probably not on the coaching front. Obviously, I think Sean Spencer tried to take the jump to the NFL. And at the same time, for better or for worse, Virginia Tech looked like a different job under Brent Pry than it did James Franklin. So does that change the pot? It definitely could. Now, like I said, with a lot of these guys at Penn State, like a Howe or some of these other names of Poindexter, it's different because Texas A&M is going to be playing in the college football playoff. Now, if they beat Miami in that first game and they go on a little run, it's a different situation as you start going into January. So that's something you're going to have to watch along that defensive line, but a name that definitely has come up. Good question. Got Mike saying, please say Dex. I know people are coming in here at different times, but yes, Anthony Poindexter is definitely a name that has legitimate smoke around Virginia Tech. I think a big part of it is just the timing of when Penn State finished the bowl game. And obviously, Matt Campbell is still trying to figure out and work through his staff up there. But Poindexter and Franklin have a great relationship. But it sounds like that's something they're trying to get done. A lot of people asking about the offensive coordinator. Someone that has interviewed for the offensive coordinator position, John David Baker, as we touched on, does not sound like it's really trending that direction with him in Virginia Tech. Obviously, there at East Carolina, Ricky Ronnie, the head coach at Old Dominion. A lot of people are speculating for that offensive coordinator position. Not someone that I'm currently hearing or Free Scoop is hearing for Virginia Tech, sort of trending for. I mean, outside of those names, the only other offensive coaches for Virginia Tech hearing any smoke for is a tight end coach, Howell from Penn State, Ty Howell. I don't think he's ever called play. So if he gets in that mix, I mean, I guess nothing would shock me at this point, but we'll see. I mean, Tyler Bone never called plays before, sort of had that background, but we'll see how that shakes out. And for the offensive line retention, maybe that would be different if you bring in a new play caller and you keep a guy like mine, to keep a guy like Moore. So, I mean, we'll see how that shakes out. Yeah, I mean, I guess Dex could. I mean, Dex has obviously carried that co-defensive coordinator tag for quite a while. I know he called plays there at UConn, but I know he's had the co-defensive coordinator tag, so I could see him being like his same role, safeties co-DC. I could definitely see that. Got Dale saying, so no Tim Banks. Nope, does not sound like Tim Banks will be joining on. Now, that was someone, obviously Banks has ties to Franklin. He coached a really, top 10 defense last year at Tennessee. So it's pretty crazy how fast, this coaching search moves when you can be the head of a top 10 defense one year and let go the next. So yeah, that's crazy. But obviously, no, it doesn't sound like he will be joining Virginia Tech. There was some talks there of early on, but I think he might, based on some of the stuff I'm hearing, G6 head coaching opportunities coming down the pipe. But obviously, someone who's called plays at a lot of different places. Got the RJH9er. The signage on the whiteboard is crazy. Look, man, last minute deal here getting it set up, but not in the usual studio. Paul Chapman saying VT could save money on prize buyout as well. Yeah, 100%. Like when those contract figures come out, that's obviously probably going to be when it gets released officially. And I think that'll be really key, big to see how that is structured. Also, like I said, I think that defensive staff is going to be pretty wide open for him to go out and try and fill it the way he does. Obviously, Franklin has a lot of connections, but a lot of those are overlap connections. And you've got a lot more resources and, just being honest, a lot more attractive job to try and go get top talent in the room coaching. So I said some of those names: Poindexter, Dan Connor from Penn State, some smoke from Coach Chaos at A&M. That's already a higher ceiling than some of the guys you had in there. So I think those are some names to watch. Yeah, it's a great question here from Ryan McGinley. Ryan McGinley, yeah, 7489. How do you think this affects the culture in the locker room while trying to change over the culture of the locker room? Fair. I mean, I think for the culture right now, it's just a lot to take in. Uh, for true freshmen, for seniors, for whoever it is, seniors, have already graduated or they're walking in May, they're wrapping up their last finals, they're sort of uninterested players who are obviously trying to figure out, should I stay? Should I go? Where's my next step? It's a lot to take in. You're having exit meetings, you're having entrance meetings with new coaches, and then your old coach is suddenly back in the door, or that's a reporting you're hearing. It's just a lot to take in. Um, if you're talking about Pry specifically, how does that affect the culture? Like I said, and talking with people over the weekend, got a pretty good sample size saying he's still pretty popular within the locker room. Guys, someone they still want to play for. They have great relationships. The entire roster, or almost the entire roster now, moving forward, was recruited by Brent Pry. It just didn't work out. So I, I think there's not going to be a massive disconnect there. But at the same time, power balance, power structure. I don't know if you've ever really seen it where the head guy comes on as the defensive coordinator within the same calendar year. I think there will be some awkwardness to work through with that. But they're professionals at the end of the day. I guess this is amateurism sport, but it's a results based business. I think people will figure it out and move on. Got Lane Jameson saying, I can't deny that it's weird, but I don't mind it. Yeah, I think it would be negligent or like not true even if you pulled everyone saying that knee jerk reaction is just a little weird. Like my open, it was just, it's like, where do you find the words to say it? There is just awkwardness there. It's like when you walk past your ex girlfriend, it's like you could have all the love in the world, but there's just some upwellings of feelings there where, you can't exactly put a finger on it, but it's just an odd dynamic. And it's a changing time in college football, and you have to go make the best hire because you have to win early. Like look at Kurt Signetti. There's no excuse if you don't win early anywhere anymore. He's kind of broken the standard for a lot of different coaches, and Franklin thinks Pride gives him the best opportunity. And it just so happened that he was the head coach that preceded him. So he went out and retained him, or I guess brought him on after being fired. I'm really interested to see what that contract looks like. But yeah, there's a lot more with that as we have. I don't know if the audio's picking up. We got someone playing piano behind us. Got Paul Chapman saying need to keep Fergus conditioning coach. Yeah, I'm not so familiar with the Penn State head strength and conditioning coach, but it sounds like there's a connection for him to come down with them and Ferg to stay on as well. Obviously, Ferg's connection to Virginia Tech, but it does sound like he will have a role if he were to want it, obviously. Miles Johnson touching on this a little bit. How about the running backs coach and then Bonway Hokie saying Brooks? That's not a name I'm currently hearing for Virginia Tech to retain on the staff. It sounds like for the offense, at least the Mines has been pretty consistent throughout the entire process. Sounds like Fontel Mines had a pretty good opportunity to be retained, and then just recently sounding with the Trotwine and some of that news shaking out, Matt Moore might be in line for a pretty good chance to be retained, but definitely still working through some of those details on that front, but have not heard much on Brooks. Denzel Jones with a good question that I think a lot of people are carrying right now. When can we expect these coaching decisions to be announced or finalized? And, we touched on that a little bit in this already, where for a certain situation, what's the rush? Where, you at this point, it's a dead period. You can't go out and recruit and hit the road. So you can't go out and recruit and hit the road. So I think like at that time, right now, there's not much you can do except try and install and get ahead of the portal and reevaluate the room that's currently here, and then try and make the best decisions moving forward on personnel and those type choices. I think you'll start to see some trickle out in the next week. I think you'll start to see some trickle out after Penn State's bowl game. I think for Pride, you'll probably see it once they figure out the contract situation. So it'll really vary, but I think you will start to see them here in the coming weeks, definitely before January in that portal. Got Bonway saying huge help. They don't retain Brooks. I'm not sure. I mean, the running back coach, obviously he has Franklin and whoever they bring in as the offensive coordinator. Running back coaching, there was a great discussion over on VT Scoop today about the running back coach and how you could sort of hide a great recruiter there in the past. But now it's like if you have a great recruiter, just keep him off the field. We'll see how they go. And I don't know. We'll see what they do there. Ryan McGinley saying, does the Pry news help retain guys like Copeland and Woodson? I think it varies. It's case-by-case basis. And every situation is different. Players are weighing options from different schools. I mean, it definitely helps with certain players. It doesn't not hurt with different players, but it's not the most popular with other guys. So there's sort of a sine wave to it. And where do you fall? I think overall it's pretty popular, but I don't think you can point to it and say this will be the decisive factor for different players who are like, oh, I was certainly going to jump in the portal, or this was the factor that kept me here. You know, I think there's a monetary aspect. I think there's a playing time aspect. I think there's a familiarity aspect, a proximity aspect for a lot of different players that comes into it. I got Colt Yost talking about Ricky Ronnie would be a great OC hire. Obviously, we touched on it in the show that it does not sound like Virginia Tech is going to, or Ronnie is going to move forward with the potential OC opening at Virginia Tech. Just some of the reporting that we're hearing. Got Mike talking about Dan Connor, the linebackers coach at Penn State. That's one where there's a lot of smoke there. Even in talking to different people, it sounds like there's definitely real smoke there between Dan Connor and coming down to coach the linebackers. Man, I got some good questions in the live chat. Got Brendan right. Brendan, appreciate it. Would also be quite unhappy with the first-time coordinator. Can obviously work, but why risk it at this point? And yeah, I think that's totally fair. And honestly, that's probably one of the best comments on the show tonight as you look forward into, obviously, Pry's called defenses before, but at that offensive coordinator position, still sounds like there's some to play out, shake out there. But if they do go down the route of someone who is a first-time play caller, when you see the staff resources and the increases there, it does feel like you could maybe leave a little bit to be desired if you do go that direction. Now, granted, I've never coached a snap, let alone at a Power 4 level. So it's really easy for me to say, but I think just looking at it on paper, that could definitely leave some to be desired. But yeah, you saw just recently at Virginia Tech a couple guys who had never done it at that level, and there was a lot of on-the-job training, and it didn't work out so well. And I think at the end of the day, Brent Pry could say and point to that, okay, that probably cost me my job. So now there's things to work through. And at one point, Brent Pry never called plays. So you kind of have to get your feet wet and learn by fire. But it'll definitely be interesting if they decide to go that way. Got Denzel Jones saying, yeah, please, no first-time play callers. Offense has been bad so many years. Yeah, I think that would be – it would definitely be something that would get called out, and a lot of people would have some speculation over. Got Paul Chapman saying Pat Surtain Sr. was just let go at Florida State. He would go after him for DBs. I think he'll probably find a spot there. Obviously, father of Pat Surtain. He played in the NFL. Obviously, son's now in the Broncos, went to Alabama. I'm not so sure. Like I said, have heard some smoke around Dex. There was smoke around Terry Smith at corners until Penn State decided to re-up and keep him up there. But yeah, I have not heard any smoke on Surtain. I can only imagine this is Iron saying if we wait too long, Penn State locks up Dex. I mean, potentially. I just think at this point, what's the rush? Like, if you're Virginia Tech, the thing working against you is the thing working in Penn State's favor of that bowl game and knowing, okay, well, if you want him, come pull him from us and give us that pretty penny. So I think Virginia Tech would probably be wise to let these contracts work out. Now, that's not my decision, obviously, and they have to weigh on if they need it now or to wait. So I think that's sort of what they're weighing. Appreciate the support. Apologize for the audio. It's picking up any of the background noise. We will hopefully be back in the normal studio on Wednesday night. Got Mike saying brother-in-law lives in State College and sounds like heat around Connor. Yep, hearing a lot of the same. So got TJC 2016 VT saying any Torian Gray talk. Obviously, Torian Gray defensive back, long history with Virginia Tech, down at South Carolina with Shane Beamer. People have floated his name for that corner, or I guess defensive back position coach rumors here at Virginia Tech, but do not hear any real buzz moving in that direction. I highly doubt Torian Gray will be on the staff. Obviously, I think a very quality recruiter, let alone position coach, has quite a bit of talent from the 757 region that he was able to lure down to South Carolina. But no, at this time, I do not see Torian Gray being the pick for Virginia Tech at the defensive back position. I got Paul Chapman saying quarterback at Notre Dame hit the portal. Backup who was competing with CJ Carr, I believe Minchie, may be good as well as the ODU quarterback Colton Joseph. I think both those guys will definitely get a look. Obviously, Colton Joseph, very, very familiar to James Franklin and someone to keep an eye on. There's some other names to watch at this time, but I think there's still a lot to play out with the transfer portal board as this all sort of unpans and shakes out. So I'm not so sure. Like I said, the quarterback market, I think this year is going to really open eyes to people on how broken this system is, that it is essentially just open season free agency consistently, where you have a guy that's starting and having success moving somewhere else just for the financial benefit. And like, you can think you can have a long-term starter locked up, signed, and I think there's going to be some really massive names move that is really going to open some eyes and hopefully instill some change to try and stabilize things a little bit. But that's my 2 cents, because you really can't evaluate your board until you see who else you're recruiting against is going to need and who else is also in the portal. Because you can't, unless you really have a guy locked in that you go all in on before sort of seeing what's out there. But good question. Okay, got Kenneth Burnett. I think this echoes what a lot of people are probably feeling, but we'll get into this. There's layers, nuance. We'll try to get into it with a cool head. Shaking my dang head. Literally unreal. We're addicted to losing. How soon Virginia Tech forgets he had us with the 120th ranked defense and the very bottom of the ACC, not to mention the 124th ranked recruiting class. This is crazy. So a little bit of nuance there. Chris Marv was calling the defense. So the last couple of years, Chris Marv, that was his fingerprints. And then also Sam Stevkis, he brings in to go call the defense. Those are his hires, obviously. So the bill comes due to him at the end of the day, and obviously it cost him his job. 124th in the ACC, that's after a couple lean years. And then pretty much realizing, okay, we're going to have to lean pretty heavily on the portal because we are not finding the traction in high school to really turn this ship around, which is not an advantageous position to be in. But really, when there's no way else to dig yourself out of that hole except winning games on the field and then try and turn it around off the field. His recruiting chops as a head coach were heavily limited. And it's probably going to be more like that as a defensive coordinator, where coordinators are kind of less on the road until they get on campus. I think he's good in the recruiting game, has obviously had success. You can point to Micah Parsons pretty quickly, and he'd be the first to jump and do that. But at that defense that he was actually calling in 2022 to be top 50, you look at some of his metrics up at Penn State. Granted, with a higher talent ceiling, but he's going to have more talent here at Virginia Tech and a better staff at Virginia Tech. So I think there is a ton of nuance to that. There were a lot of issues within the structure of Virginia Tech under Brent Pry's watch that I don't think you can just let go. But at the same time, he's seen a lot of college football, and James Franklin has the reins. And if this is the guy he wants to call his defense, that's kind of what it's going to be. But yeah. Got TJC saying Coach Chaos got into Sean Spencer and their connection, and there's a possibility of joining Virginia Tech. I think there could be. Obviously, the run at Texas A&M could change things, and a lot could change things. But the staff pool is very aggressive. I think they're going to go out and take some pretty big swings. Got Brendan Wright saying any guys Virginia Tech would want to keep that might leave. There's a litany of guys. Almost all your players are pretty much being contacted by other schools right now, and the same vice versa. It is it's pretty insane. Just sort of the open, you can call it tampering, whatever it is. It's just talking to agents. So yeah, some players that have had nice seasons are obviously in open discussions, or even unknowingly open discussions between agents and other schools on their behalves. So there's a lot at play now, more than just relationships. There's a financial aspect. There's proximity. There's a lot that goes into it. So, I think you could see some losses, but it's like, how do you make it up on what you bring in, on the monetary value associated with it? And honestly, a lot of that you won't know until the season comes around. But yeah, there will definitely be some pretty major attrition. Got Kenneth Burnett again saying Virginia Tech should have hired Chesney. This is literally a nightmare. Just gonna let that sit there. From, I think in your initial comment, you argued that the recruiting class was close to 124th, and now I believe it's up to 24th in the composite ranking. So a 100-spot jump in 17 days. I think Bob Chesney I'm positive Bob Chesney would have not had a comparable impact if you think recruiting was a big part of it, which I also agree with. Recruiting is a really big part of collegiate football, but I don't think Bob Chesney could have turned it around to that level. I promise everyone we're not in the music hall, even though it sounds like people are recording music in the background. This is Kolby's Corner, though. We're in a boardroom. It's grimy. We're getting to it in the Q&A. Appreciate all the comments. Subscribe to the channel. Like the video. Oh, man. Yeah, Mike saying, what's your quick take on Notre Dame? I think it's a tough situation. I think Notre Dame is one of those teams that was talented enough to go win the college football playoff. I think they had a team that could go win the national championship, but they lost 2 regular season games. You practice all year, fall camps, summer workouts, and back into the spring, winter workouts to go prove it on the field. And, they scheduled Arkansas. Arkansas lost every SEC game. You had a weaker ACC schedule. And then in your 2 tests, I know it was early and it was by combined, 4 points. You lost to Miami on the road, and that score honestly probably didn't show how unclose that game was. And then you go to A&M, and I know it's 2 teams that are going to play each other. But, still, you had 2 opportunities to prove it. And I know it was early, and you still kind of had the training wheels on CJ Card, but that's what you play the games for. And you lost to Miami. So I just think that's sort of my take is Alabama wasn't going to fall out being the top team in the SEC, and Miami beat you in the head-to-head. So, look at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt had their most successful season ever, going 10-2, and they were just off that dance table. Now, that just because someone gets left with a little bit of heartbreak, that means you have something that's valuable that people want. That doesn't mean expand it and give everyone a participation trophy, which is what Tony Petitti and some of these other guys want to go to 24. Then it'll be 48. It's like at some point, like the adults got to stand up in the room. And, you're arguing about the 12th and 13th, or even in this case, whatever, the 10th and 11th best team in the country. If you're not definitively the 10th or best team in the country, I don't think you should go play for a national championship. And I don't think that's a crazy take. So I think go handle your business on the field. Got John Baker saying 4 was nice. Yeah, and the next one by John Baker, BCS was better than this. 100% agree. Who doesn't want one more committee in life? But I don't know. That's essentially what it is now. It's just now you have people going behind it saying they're grinding tape. They're doing all this. They're crunching the numbers when realistically you're having a database like the BCS pretty much script out what the rankings would be, and then maybe having the committee look at 1 or 2 and make some changes. Like these ADs who have their own roles are expected to go watch 50 hours of college football and say, oh, this passed the eye test, when they're realistically not just handed a pamphlet with a spreadsheet and data and just read straight off that. It's all kind of a joke. It should definitely go back to that model. And I know it will, obviously, because TV product, expansion, great. Everyone deserves a seat at the table. But, they really should not move past 12 ever. But obviously when you have people already lobbying on TV for 16 and 24, it's only moving that direction. And, it's almost set up this way to be like, well, look, Notre Dame was left out, so now we have to go to 14. We have to go to 38. We have to go to 64. So that's my 2 cents on it. I feel like I can get triggered over it, but I just very passionate about college football. And I feel like it's something that needs to be looked at by adults in the room, and it's been neglected for too long. Yeah, Mike saying larger number of playoff teams will destroy bowls. Yeah, Notre Dame turning down their bowl bid is an opportunity for seniors. There's so much that goes into bowl weeks. These bowl organizations, there's so much. There's charities attached. There's life-changing opportunities. And you hear coaches, man, it's so often stolen. Every coach at every press conference you listen to says, we want to be transformational, not transactional. It's like the easiest baseline ever. It's just really getting lost in the process of like 18 to 22-year-old young men, sort of really showing how money drives the show, and it always has. But I mean, it's really changed a lot, and it's like, is someone going to stand on the table and try and swing the pendulum back before it's too far? Because I mean, once you go too far, you give an inch, you take a mile, and then you can't go back. Anyway, got Scott try and answer some of these. Appreciate all the questions. Not sure how many more. Oh shoot, we got quite a few more. Getting all the traction when we have the worst audio. Appreciate it, everyone. On December 8th, I don't even know who's on. Like, I forget Monday Night Football's on. Thank you for hanging out with us. Got Scott Rhodes saying, I'm still super confused about NIL versus rev share versus payment to player. Pretty well known NIL was a farce slush fund previously. Any insight into JF payment structure? I'm a little confused by your question. So NIL is name, image, and likeness payments. Those are payments that go on top of rev share. So rev share is what, currently $20.5 million from the school, but it just got an increase year over year. So that can go split up amongst the other sports. Like I think Virginia Tech was 15%, or excuse me, 15 million to football, 2 mil to 2.5 mil to basketball, whatever it was. But yeah, I mean that's rev share directly coming from the school to pay athletes, and then NIL is anything on top of that. I mean that's any brand deals, deals that you sign with companies that have to go through the NIL Go app, which is set up there by Deloitte, and then pass through the CSC to make sure those deals are fair market value. It doesn't really sound like they're halting many deals, so there's some very, very expensive compensation packages tied into that. And when you talk about insight into James Franklin's payment structure, his contract details were released. There's an article over on btscoop.com that has all those details if you want that. Got Iron saying 6 or 16, it's a mess. Agreed. Yeah, I mean, don't want to dominate the entire show, obviously. I'm talking about the college football playoff, but yeah, it's definitely a mess. Getting a front row seat to a concert here on Kolby's Corner. Got John Baker saying Fiesta Bowl with Boise and Oklahoma peak. And yeah, I mean, I understand the notion of any given Saturday, and you know, people always want to throw that in the face. They want to talk about Michigan and Appalachian State, and like anything's possible. Yeah, cool, great. Like, but if you don't want to recognize, and I know it's hard, and you know, people always fight back when you say this, and it's like, how dare they? Like, I grew up in Norfolk, Virginia. I grew up going to Old Dominion football games. Like, like G6, I'm all about it. Like, I think all these programs are still very important. It's not to diminish, but I mean, to think when you go to SP Ballard Stadium and you walk into Bryant-Denny Stadium and try and act like those two are playing the same game. And, you know, it's like David versus Goliath. It's a great sentiment, and I'm all for it. I really am. Like, there's a part for it. It's not to diminish these teams and say that they're not playing, obviously, in the non-conference schedule. But if you want to make the most – this really is all about money, and to make the best games for viewing into the holiday window and fill some of those slots late in the year, I think there has to be some look at what you do in that position, because it's not the same game. It's just not the same game anymore. So got Joe saying Pry was an average DC at Penn State, so he should not be hired. Franklin should hire an excellent DC, and Pry should not be given hiring authority based on his time at Tech. I think a lot of the hires are still going to be coming down from the top from James Franklin. I mean, I think Pry will have insight, but at the end of the day, if Franklin is picking Pry, I don't understand the basis of your argument. Obviously, he's making an effort. He thinks that's the best guy to do the job, so that's why he's making that decision. Got Mike saying Poindexter is a legit coach and recruiter. He's DC caliber. Yeah. Dylan saying, does Pop stay? I know I like to say I don't really traffic in saying or speculating on players' movement prior to any formal announcements, because things change all the time. I really don't traffic in it. Nothing's done. Just based on everything I'm hearing at this time, it does not sound like Pop Watson is going to stay on. Obviously, still a lot to play out. Things can change, but just based on the way things are going, writings on the wall, you sort of have to make a move at this point, being going into, I guess, redshirt junior status. So. Got Jack Line 3 saying, any news on the 27 recruits? Had a really good article drop on btscoop.com on Friday. Me catching up with some of the top in-state Virginia guys from the 27, as well as quarterback in the 2029 class, Lord Malik Haru. I mean, that's a name to know. I mean, you want to talk about elite quarterbacks come out of the 757, Tyrod Taylor, obviously Vic. Why is it slipping? Went to Clemson. Taj Boyd, excuse me, sorry. I mean, I think he could be that next guy. If he stays in the region, he could probably go prepping. But, there's news on them. Brian Doan just had another really great piece drop over on the site today. Top 10 players in Virginia reacting to it. Pretty good traction, but obviously it's a dead period right now, so you're not going to see a lot of movement on that front for a little while. But when it is time, vtscoop.com, man, it's going to be the place to be. Junior days, it's going to be so extremely busy. Make sure to get over there. 50% off for the year. I mean, incredible value. So make sure to go check it out, vtscoop.com. And then literally the next question after that, any idea on when the first junior day will be? I'm sure it'll be right around then in January. See, because they just changed it when the dead period is, but I'm sure it'll be right around there in later January. But good question. And like I said, for pictures, articles, latest insight and updates around those junior days, vtscoop.com, the best coverage for Virginia Tech on those junior days. Good questions. Just trying to see through. I've answered some of these. Appreciate all the support, guys. Got a lot of people tuned in here on a Monday night. Thank you guys so much. Got Denzel Jones saying, I think I touched on this already a little bit in answering one question, that Pry struggled hiring good staff as head coach. We've been worried about that with him at DC. And I think I said a lot of that, at least initially, is going to be driven down from James Franklin. A lot of those decisions are going to be coming down from the top. So, I mean, like I said, there's scar tissue. I think I said that in the open about Brent Pry. There's obviously familiarity in the relationship. So there's a little bit of awkwardness. You're not going to be given as long of a leash from the fan base, from different stakeholders. But, I mean, this is Franklin's program. That was obviously why he signed on, because he could kind of grab the reins and point the direction whichever way he wanted to go. And Pry was obviously going to be a big part of that. So I'm not sure if it's something to worry about, something to keep an eye on, but a lot of the names already linked are guys who have done it at a really high level at multiple different stops and at a different caliber coach, realistically, just call it like it is, and some of the guys that have been there on the staff. Got Andrew saying, when will we hear any coaching announcement? That's a good question. I think it'll start to trickle out here in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, with Pry, there's things to work through still with the buyout and contract structure. With other guys, they're still got to coach out through bowl games and different situations like that if they're in the playoff. But I think you'll see it relatively here sooner than later. Still got a ton of questions left to get through. Appreciate everyone hanging out. Okay, Andrew saying, any info on the NIL meeting yesterday? I mean, it just sounds like it was Franklin trying to get ahead of it. Obviously, had got pledged quite a bit of money on the front end. That's why he accepted the head coaching position here. But it was just working through details on how to make sure you build a sustainable framework for those figures and making sure that it's sustainable year over year. So I think that was most of the meeting. But it sounds like it was a productive meeting. Yeah, Miles Johnson saying J.C. Price staying. Based on today, does not sound like a lot of the defensive staff will be staying on. Got Bruce saying any smoke about any portal players. Too soon for that. Yeah, I mean, I know it's tough right now and everyone wants everything right now after the signing day, but it is kind of too soon for that. I mean, obviously there's going to be guys following from Penn State with the connection. There's going to be other guys who have connections that are going to be following, but there's still a lot to work through. As soon as that starts to become available here on the show, we'll get into it. VTScoop.com will have the latest on that. But right now, I mean, it's still early. They're in the dead period. I would say right now, the predominant focus is on the staff. So I know like the portal is great and like retention and building out for 26 is super important. But right now, it's kind of a lot for the staff preparing for that transfer portal window. Got Harold saying, has Monty interviewed anyone? If you're talking about at Virginia Tech, Monty is not expected to be retained. So not interviewing anyone. I don't know if you're talking about interviewed anywhere. I've not heard on that front. Got Alexander Miser saying finals week, Q-zip mentality in the snow, dude. Just trying to get the truck to start to get over here. Mike saying Franklin tried to hiring minds to come to Penn State. Yeah, a couple times. Like they have a great relationship. Obviously, someone that I think you could definitely see staying on with Franklin. Case Smitty talking about Colton Joseph. A lot of people talking about Colton Joseph. Obviously, I think that's someone they'll definitely give a real look to. So, I mean, there's smoke there, but a lot of other programs will as well, especially in the quarterback market. I know a lot of the portal is like names to watch. What's happening? The quarterback market, it's like, what jobs are even open yet? When the playoffs are done, what jobs are going to come open? Who's going to need a quarterback? The whole board is going to shake out quite a bit. Yeah, Brendan Wright saying, I'm surprised by the statements that players love Pry. It's hard for me to say that. Didn't look like they gave up on him at the end. UVA, and I mean, he wasn't coaching UVA, so that's different. But if you're talking about the ODU and Vanderbilt games, I think there is some to that. People say that, but yeah, I don't know. There's interesting dynamics sometimes. There can just be a breaking point, and there's a whole lot difference in being a head coach and a coordinator. That's all I'll say. Got Speed saying in here, Josh Clark on lock. Yeah, Speed might have an interview coming with Josh Clark here soon. Someone I've obviously been very high on in the past, hyping him up before his injury in the spring. Someone who I think could have made the season look a whole lot different if he was playing out there on the outside at corner. Very long, rangy, fast. I think people are going to be very excited to see him back healthy. Looks like he's ramping his way back up this offseason to be good to go by spring and winter workouts. Got Andrew saying, can't see Franklin saying, want to open up the offense and hire for some offensive coordinator. Yeah, I mean, those two don't exactly go hand in hand, but crazier things have happened. And yeah, and it would be very interesting. He's obviously doubled down and said that quite a few times, but if you think you have the right guy, hire the right guy. And I think that's what it might come down to. As South Carolina just confirms they hired TCU's Kendall Browse as offensive coordinator. Sounds like it was building that way, but now it's official. So we'll see what ripples that has. Got Colt Yost, good question. And thank you guys again, man. I mean, I keep saying it, but thank you so much. I mean, to start this show up, obviously people have been following me, but to get this show going, meeting a ton of people, the feedback, really like get at me in the comments, DMs, like what do you want to see with the show? I want to make this everyone's show. Give everyone what they want, what they desire. So thank you for all the feedback, the support. It's really meant the world. Can't emphasize that enough. So make sure to subscribe, like the video. Gonna keep trying to get better and better content out for everyone. But yeah, Colt Yo saying, how many new faces will we see on the roster next season? Obviously, you have close to 25 guys coming in through the high school ranks. And I think you'll probably see close to 25 to 30 coming in from the transfer portal ranks. So out of 105 scholarship players, I think you'll probably see close to 50 new faces, which isn't atypical or dissimilar than last year when you saw a massive overhaul. And is that standard now in this day and age? I don't think so. I think if you're still a high school-based program with stability, you won't see that massive overturn. But I think pretty much year in and year out, you're going to see quite a few guys cycle in and out no matter what. It's just a day and age. But yeah. Got Mike talking about Torian Gray. Yeah, I do not see him leaving South Carolina. Got Justin saying this is not a nightmare. Have some patience. Yeah, I mean, I think that's talking about the comment about a nightmare when talking about Franklin versus Chesney. I think that argument, yeah, like you've already immediately increased your floor, and if you bring in the players and some of the situations, the ceiling really hasn't been there for Virginia Tech. The ACC obviously kind of made a fool of itself on Saturday night and really showing how weak the league is. I mean, the stars are really kind of aligning for Virginia Tech. They've been very fortunate. A lot of bounces have gone their way. Now, with Penn State, some things they probably could have ideally wanted to go better or work for them. But overall, I mean, Virginia Tech is sitting in a very, very great position. I got Ryan saying, "How are the finals looking?" We're hanging in there, man. We got 2 tomorrow, and then a couple more next week. But we're hanging in there, man. I guess, one more semester after this. Got Dave saying, "Are you in the corner though?" I guess technically we're not in the corner anymore. I guess we're in the conference room. Kolby's corner gone corporate. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Got John Baker saying, "Will someone think of Troy?" They were see, like exactly. That was going back to my college football playoff tirade. It's like, I think a lot of people like can come to a consensus in the room. It's just why I don't know. It can be very frustrating. Trav saying Group of 5 needs their own playoff. You beat that drum, and then some people look at you crazy. Like, look, we should be given an opportunity. It's like, what, an opportunity to go get your face curb stomped? It's like, why do you want to be first in line to do that? I think that'd be a great opportunity. I just don't know the logistics to that. It's like, yes, I'm the guy that everyone hates for. It's like you're throwing darts at a board and you're not presenting a real solution. I mean, everyone has ideas, but it's like, how can it be implemented if there's no governance body? I think that has to come first. Got Mike saying players getting paid, transfer portal, bowls are not attractive to players anymore. They used to have nice incentives. Now they get paid way more than that. I can see what you're saying, but I'm going to take a little narrative from that. A lot of these guys written in their contracts have not incentives, but I guess there's write-ins about bowls. And if they decide not to play in a bowl game, that could hurt your wallet a little bit in the way some of these contracts are written up. And I've seen that firsthand and heard that. So that's a little piece that's being written into some of these deals. Yeah, Alex saying, "Can you play an instrument?" Well, I'm decent on guitar, and I was first chair bass saxophone in Norfolk for All City Middle School, except there was only one chair, so I was the only one. But I'm all right on the sax. Kobe saying, "This is a good question. I mean, a little more theoretical. I do deal in hypotheticals because why not? Over under 4 years at Virginia Tech for Franklin. I think over 4 years. I mean, I think his deal was for 5. I see it going over 4 years for Franklin at VT. Got Justin Pitt saying, "I think Pry does love Virginia Tech. I also think that Pry is more comfortable in a coordinator role than being head coach. You could tell that being a head coach at times was a little overwhelming for him. And yeah, you could definitely see that where that's why he initially gave up the defense, calling the defense, is because there's so much going on in the speed, the flow of a game where, you had to give up that role to be engaged and clock management. There's so much. It could definitely seem like at some point, there's guys who are career coordinators because they try and take that step and it just doesn't jive or flow and fit. And you could definitely see that at times. Got Barbed Thread saying, "Any word of former players on staff, a DB?" I've not heard word on Phillips. Does not sound like a DB will be staying on. But Phillips is sort of tied with mine, so I'm not so certain there. Obviously, mine sounds like he will be staying on. Got Brendan Wright saying any shot that one or more true freshmen start next year. So who would be more likely? True freshmen, so that'd be the guys who just signed. Don't really see anyone on the offensive line, quarterback, not running back. I mean, I would say Amari Polydor, early enrolling at corner, could see his way. I mean, I don't really foresee any of these guys starting, but that's one I could see. Zay Cleveland, maybe if it's positional need, but not realistically. T-Ron Richardson, if he comes on and tears it up at D-line, but outside of that, not really. Got Speed saying earlier in the process we were expecting around 50 guys coming from the portal. Has that outlook shifted? You've been mentioning because of the improved retention under. I think the retention has a part of it, but also you look at the class that he was able to turn over. I don't know if they even expected to get 25 guys in from high school, as well as the retention aspect. So it's making sure to like have those tough conversations, process the guys out that you're looking to process out, so you can get the guys in from Penn State and other places. But at the same time, getting that solid high school class in there sort of frees you up, alleviates some of that pressure and that strain of the portal. So I think it is going to be closer to that 25 to 30 range. When earlier on, maybe that was 40, 50 numbers were coming out. I don't know if I said that, but like definitely there were people sort of banging that drum. But that bringing it, because there for a time, it looked pretty grim going from 8 to close to 25 high school guys, maybe a couple late signees. But I think you could see close to 30 transfer portal guys still, which is still, I think, a pretty large number year over year. Cool. Well, I think that sort of wraps up most of the questions for the night. Went well over an hour. Um, Sorry for the audio issues as we're starting in a new location tonight. Just working through it these last couple of weeks of December as we get closer to finals and everything. Make sure to stay tuned into vtscoop.com for all the coaching scoop as Virginia Tech just stays on the tracks, keeps rolling from one thing to the next, and the portal is right around the corner. vtscoop.com, 50% off. Subscribe to the YouTube channel down below. I keep saying it on the show, not trying to overemphasize it enough, but thank you so much for the support. It's been amazing meeting a ton of different people and seeing the real impact. So it means a ton. Thank you for all the kind words. Appreciate the feedback as well about what do you want to see in the show. Because as much as it is my show, I guess it's my name, kind of narcissistic there, but I want it to be everyone's show. Find some value in it, hang out for a couple nights a week. So thank you guys for that. Until then, stay warm, be safe out there on the roads wherever you are. Have a great rest of your week. Enjoy college football. Protect college football, because don't let the we got to keep the wrong people from having their hands on the wheel. But enjoy it. Have a great week. We'll be back Wednesday night at 8:30. Maybe potentially some new coaching news. Until then, definitely some scoop. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your night. God bless. See you Wednesday.